Welcome to Key Tech. Please describe this channel if you are interested in today's video. Recently, Qualcomm has made a high-profile statement that if it cannot restore the chip shipment license to Huawei, it will completely abandon cooperation with Huawei. It sounds like a desperate declaration, but if you think about it carefully, there is always a taste of, the dagger is revealed. Is Qualcomm really willing to give up Huawei, or does it have no choice but to swell its face and pretend to be fat? This breakup drama not only affects the two major technology giants in China and the United States, but also reflects the game of the global semiconductor industry chain, and makes people have to re-examine who is forced into a desperate situation in the current technology landscape. Who would have thought that Huawei and Qualcomm were once an enviable, iron partner? Before 2019, Qualcomm could steadily earn hundreds of millions of dollars every year by supplying chips to Huawei, which is a big piece of cake in Qualcomm's revenue. Huawei is also willing to pay a lot of patent licensing fees to get Qualcomm's Snapdragon chips and use them in mid- and low-end models to fill the gap. After all, at that time, there was food at home, and there was no panic in the heart. But things are unpredictable, and a ban has put a brake on this cooperation. Since the United States included Huawei in the Entity List, Qualcomm has had to suspend its supply to Huawei, which is a catastrophic blow to both parties. Qualcomm lost one of its most important Chinese customers, and Huawei was isolated overnight and could no longer rely on Qualcomm's chip supply chain. The honeymoon period of cooperation ended hastily and awkwardly, like a forced breakup, under natural disasters and man-made disasters. But what people didn't expect was that it was Huawei that became more free and easy from being forced to taking the initiative. To be honest, no one dared to guarantee that Huawei, which had separated from Qualcomm, could hold on at the beginning. For a time, the pessimistic argument of sitting and waiting for death was rampant. But Huawei's answer was very direct. Independently developed Kirin chips, rebounded from the bottom, and used technology to confront head-on. After a period of adjustment, investment, and overcoming, Huawei launched the Kirin 9000S chip in 2023. This completely independent self-developed product not only has excellent performance, but also proves the ability of Chinese technology giants to rise again in the chip field. It is worth mentioning that all this is inseparable from the diversified layout of the supply chain. For example, TSMC once provided assistance to Huawei in the early days, and even some domestic supply chain partners later contributed to Huawei in key technical links. Through the effective integration of supply chain resources, Huawei has embarked on a self-reliant turnaround path. From the initial dependence on Qualcomm to the current complete escape, this transformation is touching and makes Qualcomm feel pressured. After all, without Huawei's orders, it is a real injury. Unlike Huawei's decisiveness and pragmatism, Qualcomm appears more anxious and contradictory in this game. On the one hand, there is the constraint of the ban, and on the other hand, there is the loss of market share. Qualcomm has long been in a dilemma of being attacked from both sides. Let's talk about the economic blow brought by the ban first. Without Huawei as a customer, hundreds of millions of dollars in chip revenue each year are gone. This is like a cliff-like performance plunge, especially after the Huawei ban. Various Chinese companies began to look for alternatives, such as MediaTek quietly seizing positions in the domestic market with more cost-effective products. Data shows that MediaTek's market share has been expanding year by year since 2019, and even surpassed Qualcomm at one point to become China's largest chip supplier. This is a second blow to Qualcomm. Not only was the cake in its hand snatched away, but it was also discovered that competitors were eating it with relish. What's worse is that this is not the first time Qualcomm has fallen out of favor. In 2018, Qualcomm and Apple had a quarrel over patent fees. Apple switched to Intel chips in anger. Although the two sides later reached a settlement, Qualcomm's technology monopoly myth has been broken. In Qualcomm's embarrassing situation, this break with Huawei seems to be a replay, and the threat to future market competitiveness will obviously be more far-reaching. In an external environment that Qualcomm cannot control, the domino effect of the US chip ban undoubtedly makes things more complicated. With Huawei locked in, many names have quietly been added to the US suppression list. From DJI to ByteDance, to other Chinese technology companies, the United States has tried to curb the development of the Chinese market through technological blockades, but this approach has backfired in some cases. For Huawei, this, closing the fold after the sheep have been lost, technological counterattack is undoubtedly a beautiful reversal. For Qualcomm, some problems seem to have nothing to do with itself, but in fact they are closely related. The ban has caused it to lose some customers, but the bigger problem is that this unilateral restrictive policy has forced more technology companies to seek independence and autonomy. In other words, the enemy of the enemy is more terrible. TSMC is a typical example. Although it was previously restricted by the pressure of the ban, TSMC is obviously also an indispensable player in the global chip industry chain. By cooperating with companies like Huawei, it also proves that the diversity of the supply chain is gradually subverting the inherent monopoly situation. From the soap opera of Qualcomm's abandoning Huawei, the audience has their own opinions. But putting aside the emotional substitution, calm down and think about it, you will find that the protagonists of this are actually two endings of technological competition. Huawei has achieved technological rise through self-reflection, and Qualcomm, despite its technological foundation, is forced to bear pressure due to the uncertain policy environment. Qualcomm's current anxiety is the anxiety written in the pattern of Sino-US technological competition, and it is also a microcosm of the sense of powerlessness embedded in the global technology supply chain. The ban not only hits its partner Huawei, but also digs a hole in Qualcomm's own living space. In the current situation, if you kill 1,000 enemies, you will destroy 800 of your own. Who can laugh last in this crisis? In the globalized industrial structure that is cut off with one knife, no one can escape, and everyone is in trouble.